Hey everyone, Aaron here with Elite Water Sports, and today's video is all about how to set up your twin tip correctly and to get the maximum amount of performance out of it per your weight, your style, all that good stuff. So stay tuned and we'll get into the nitty gritty. Here at Elite Water Sports, we are firm believers in making sure that these straps are placed correctly in order to maximize the performance of that board that you've selected. With that being said, we want to make sure as a standard here at the shop, we set the boards up out of the box, out of the bag, straight to the client, typically in a medium duck. That's how far that strap actually turns. So medium duck and a medium placement of where that strap is, forward or aft, and then additionally try not to favor the heel side too much or the toe side of that actual board. And another thing is that typically if you match a brand core with a core board, north with a north board, typically these screws, these inserts, and also the straps match up so you have the maximum amount of adaptation per your needs. Some other companies out there don't allow to put their straps on different boards or vice versa. You just can't find the right spot exactly to put those straps. So this might limit your abilities depending on what brands you have selected. So this is core board, core straps. So we have a huge range of mobility on where we can put these straps. Now, what are these three screws and what do they do? And which one do I select? If you're kind of going with our standard here at the shop, it's the medium one, but what happens if you're super short? Meaning in that 5 foot range, 5'5" range, that's what these inner screws are for. So then you would shift these straps closer to the inside of the board for shorter riders. If you're really super tall, you can favor the outside. Within reason, usually the outside would be better for you. As we get into more pro tech tips, as you reach the outside of the board, that allows you to press out more energy onto the tip of your board, but it's going to cause you to have to use more energy yourself by shifting more weight to the back leg like this, versus if you're closer stance, if you shift your weight, it's easier to put more weight on that other side of your foot. As you bring that strap forward or closer to the inside of your board, that's also going to deteriorate how much weight you can distribute to the aft of your board if you're doing like a load and pop. There's a lot of intricacies on the exact placement. We just make it easy. If you're short, bring those straps in. If you're tall, bring those straps out. Next thing is going to be about the duck. How much can you duck those straps? Well, in general, kiteboarding, you can see by the width of these straps, these are much wider than your foot itself. That's because if you're riding left, you're pointing your toes off in front of you. If you're riding right, same thing goes. So you need to be able to shift your feet within the straps. That's why boots are much harder to ride, because you're locked in. You're not able to shift your feet back and forth. With that being kind of said and explained, we actually want to make sure that we can do full range of motion on your feet. If you keep a nice square stance like this and you go to ride right, well, now you're putting a lot of pressure on the outside of your knee, trying to twist your toes out to point it off in the direction that you want to go. Same thing goes if you duck it too much. Now all of a sudden when you ride back the other way, you're putting a lot of pressure on that inside knee, and that's not going to feel very good at all. So somewhere in between where you're able to shift your feet going left or shift your feet going right is going to be the perfect placement. The placement of the strap, dependent on the center line of the board, is all determined by kind of like fatigue, your style of riding. If you find yourself doing toe side and heel side, going back and forth from that, you're going to want to have a more centralized location on that board. Now, what happens if you're just always primarily heel side, like most kiteboarders are, and only occasionally going to toe side? You can start favoring that heel side edge a bit to a certain degree. Once you've made it all the way to that edge, you're going to increase splash that's hitting that back heel or the strap itself, and it always goes up into your eyes, and that's not cool either. So what you end up doing is bringing those straps to the heel side edge. You're starting to get a lot of spray, and then you start shifting those straps closer and closer to your toe side edge. As you go closer to your toe side edge, you're going to notice one thing right away is that you're going to have a lot of fatigue on that shin muscle, and that's telling you right away you are way too close to your toe side edge. And that's because you are putting so much weight and like leverage on the top side of your toes, pulling up on that, and that's going to put all that fatigue on your shin. So going back to that golden standard, medium stance, medium duck, and medium, kind of favoring that heel side edge on the board. Play around with that a little bit. That takes some years to really notice a difference. First indication is always that spray. Let's talk about the fins. Most companies out there these days determine the size of their fin, like this is a 48 millimeter, to the size of the board. So right out of the box, they've already determined that a 48 millimeter fin works best for this 135 board. That might not be the same for other boards out there on the market. So check in with your actual company that you're selecting. Go with their standard fin that they've designed this board to work with. Some other companies actually don't use very much fin at all. Like I said, go into the branding of it. Now, if you want to start adapting to your conditions and your style of riding, of course you can go down to like 10 millimeter, 20 millimeter, 30, 40, 50. They make them up to 65 centimeters I've seen. Those are huge. And what it really is determined on is your conditions. Maybe your conditions are flat water, never any kind of chop, and your board is super edgy. You can get away with a much smaller fin. But in a real world application, that's not the scenario most of the time. You have choppy conditions, and the more chop you have or more wave riding you do, you start to increase the size of your fins. For me, I have two sets. I have a really skinny short set that's going to allow me to really rip around in flat water, makes the board a lot more playful as far as like being able to slide it, start to like kind of maneuver on like toe side, heel side, and the board's never going to grab and track like it's on rails. As I get into choppier conditions or like more like big air where I need as much bite as I can, I'm going to start going with a bigger fin. I kind of play around with those two sizes, and I don't really get into the really crazy stuff of like having 4 different fins and whatnot, but I'll leave that choice up to you. So here's kind of a cool hack that I've created throughout the years, and it's not much, but it'll help you in the long run. Putting one screw together at first, finding that hole, and then setting up that fin, getting that started. After I've gotten that started, that fin just kind of hangs out there, and I kind of match it up, then put this next one in, and now both of them are set up. Sometimes you start finding the holes and you start like trying to work it around and stuff. This is just a super fast and easy way. I don't use power drills on carbon boards. It's just kind of a thing for me. I want to make sure that everything is like lined up and threaded properly. If anything, maybe I'll use the power drills on the fins, but I certainly won't use them on the inserts, especially the first time setting up my board. As I become more comfortable and the board or the straps start to actually like adapt to the board itself, then maybe I'll use a power drill and zip zap, get it all done real fast. Now this is a hack that I've actually got to give props to Liquid Force. Liquid Force back in the day, every single twin tip, every single screw came out of the box with Loctite on it. The blue Loctite, not the red one. This is a red bottle, all right, but the blue Loctite. Everybody loses a screw eventually, and by putting some Loctite on their screws, you'll never lose a screw ever again. Unless you take it off and you throw it in your duffel bag on a travel trip, right? So put some blue Loctite on there, and I guarantee you everything's going to be tight, everything's going to stay the same exact way, and you won't have to retighten your straps or your fins after every single session. Here's a quick hack on how to get your board back if you happen to lose it at the beach, leave it at the beach, or whatever has happened. Just put your name on it, right? If you put your name in the middle of it, most of the time, we've seen it, if you're new to the community, most of the time you'll get your board back. Well, what happens if that one guy picks it up, puts it on Marketplace? Well, the law is that you actually have to have the serial number for the board to prove it that it was yours. And you would actually have to associate that serial to a purchase. And that purchase, well, most shops don't follow those serial numbers or track those serial numbers. So here's a little hack that I've learned locally is put your name underneath the strap in a hidden location, and most guys won't take the time to take the strap off and remove that info. So put your name underneath that, contact your local authority, tell them, hey, I know what's different about that board. My name is on that, hidden in a secret spot, and sure enough, it'll work for you. All right, quick hack to get your board back if you lose it at the beach or leave it at the beach, whatever has happened, put your name on it, right? Most of the time, we actually find the owners of the boards. They'll call into the shop, do you know such and such? Or if they have the phone number, they'll call them. Another hack that we've also learned is, well, if you hide your name underneath the straps, well, then you can prove that you own it. Say that person that finds it puts it on Marketplace or something like that. Now, in a true law situation, from what we've been told locally is that we would actually, the owner of the board, supposedly the owner of the board would have to have the serial number and associate that serial number to the actual purchase invoice from the shop or whatnot to prove that you bought that board. Well, no shop out there tracks serial numbers, none of them, not at all right? So you're not gonna have that to stand on. But what our local officers have told us that if we simply hide our name and number and contact info, like say underneath the straps, well, then you could surely prove that it's actually your board, and that can be held up in the court of law. Every municipality is going to be a little bit different, but we've seen that work, especially in our local situation.